Because I'm quite a perfectionist myself, and I like things being organized, I like being in control, so that triggered my theme of perfection. Which brings me to this first piece here. It's quite a big piece compared to the other things I've done. This is inspired by the artist Ursus Worley. He is an artist who basically tidies things up. Going from cars in a car park to macaronis in a plate. So I was very interested in what he was doing, and so I adopted his style and chose to organize these glass tiles. They were originally in a box, all of them together, and then I separated them by color groups and then by their value as well as shape, and eventually put them onto these sheets. Which brings me to this one here. I call it imperfection. It wasn't what I thought it'd be, and imperfection is a title given to it long after it's been completed. Why? This is firstly a Mondrian style piece, and it's the deconstruction of space with lines. But when I completed this piece, I realized that the lines weren't perfect. The edges, if you look closely, were not refined, and that triggered me to explore with different media and played around with different surfaces to try to construct perfect lines. This is acrylic on canvas. When I started to explore different surfaces, including just plain A4 paper as well as acrylic plastic boards, I realized that some lines that came out, they weren't perfect, but they were visually attractive to me. So that triggered my interest in beauty and imperfection as well, and that's where that led me. But also, instead of constructing perfection, I thought I could also look at deconstruction as an attempt to achieve perfection, because if you take away the flaws of something, perhaps it can be perfect. So that, brought me into processes such as fading, like we can see in these brush marks. This is very coincidental in a sense that I was just drying my watercolor brush, and I realized this natural fading process that takes place within it, and I was interested in the presentation of these drying brush marks. And so that was my first piece on fading. And apart from that, I also looked at processes like burning as a way of deconstructing something. This is a series of 22 sixes. Six is, the reason I chose 6 is because it's regarded as the perfect number in many cases. The biblical approach would be that God created the world in 6 days and he rested on the 7th. And also there's a mathematical definition of a perfect number, and 6 happens to be the smallest one of all. I chose the process of burning, and each 6 burns for a second longer than the one before it. So this shows a deconstruction in time. And this last one is burnt for 21 seconds. Art can be interpreted very freely, and it's subjective. To different people, art means different things. And we've learned in class, art can be to decorate, to convey a message. It means different things to different people. And to me, this course as a whole has been a process of self-realization and development, I would like. And this is a representation of my exploration, and that is why I consider it art. Art doesn't have to be perfect paintings or perfect illustrations of objects, but if it can convey your meaning, if it can convey what you're thinking, your ideas, I think it can be considered as art. I think I'm not a very good drawing person, and so the way I choose to voice out my ideas are very different than what you consider as traditional art. Sometimes it does not exist. I think it's my favorite because, well, to a certain extent, a lot of people like it, as well as it's that one piece that has the most personal connection to me. I'll start with the phrase, sometimes does not exist. It goes back to grade 9 with a conversation with my classmate in math class when we were studying the unit logic. And so we were looking at the absolute opposite of something and the negatives of something, I think they call it in math. And we were just out of the blue talking about what the opposite of always is. I thought, and I still believe in the opposite of always is never, because always is the absolute presence and never is the absolute absence. But my friend interestingly argued that the opposite of always is sometimes, which I still don't agree with. So in the context of this, and I'll tell you why later because of its conceptual relations with Mondrian, I chose the phrase sometimes does not exist. Now, Mondrian's pieces, his simplicity and his way of his really organized pieces interest me visually, but the part about Mondrian that interests me most is his thinking and sort of concepts behind his paintings and his works. He believes in illustrating the absolute bare forces, the opposing elements and forces of nature, so positive versus negative, male versus female, etc. So that triggered me, and I took that further to looking at the opposites, perfection versus imperfection. And I think that there is a line between perfection and imperfection, and there is no middle ground because it's either perfect or it's imperfect. If it has some kind of flaw, no matter how big or small, it's imperfect. Which is why sometimes metaphorically being the middle ground does not exist, in my opinion. Well, that also goes back to the yin and yang, the Tai Chi symbol in Chinese culture. This was inspired by the line itself is Alan Smith, his style with very close and sort of messy to a certain extent lines. And this zip idea by Garnet Newman. I really love this, like I said, the simplicity. I enjoy simplicity being a type of beauty. And so this series was inspired by these two artists. But conceptually, to me, they reflect my state of mind of not knowing where that line between perfection and imperfection stands. I know there is a line because, like I said, there's no middle ground. It's either perfect or imperfect, but I don't know where that line is. And these 2 years really shifted the line a bit for me because I used to believe in perfection being organization, being so meticulous and articulate about where things are and what things are.